Hey guys, alright? Welcome everyone. This story begins with a duel between a human and an orc. It is told that the battle between humans and the orc race has been happening since ancient times. We meet one of the orc race, the leader of a small clan of orcs named Durotan, looking at his pregnant wife, Draka, who says she will follow her husband wherever he goes so that when their child is born, her husband can immediately name the child. The planet Trainer is inhabited by the orc race. In one place, many orc clans gather, one of them is Durotan's clan. A friend of Durotan says that this war will be a great war. Then we see the orc war commander, Black Hand, talking to their supreme leader, Gul'dan, that everything is well prepared. There are prisoners begging to be released, but Gul'dan says it's impossible because he needs them. Then Gul'dan begins his magical ritual. We see a giant portal glowing in green, and then Gul'dan uses the lives of the prisoners to be absorbed and used by magic to open the portal. The portal opening ritual begins, and soon the orc warriors start their journey. Durotan and his wife also enter the portal, but it doesn't take long for Draka to feel something strange in her stomach. When they reach the end of the portal, Draka, with concern for Durotan, is confronted by Black Hand for bringing a pregnant woman to war. Gul'dan sees Draka in agony and then helps her give birth. The baby orc is born, but it appears lifeless. Then Gul'dan sees a deer nearby, recites an incantation that sucks the life out of the deer and blows the magic into the lifeless baby in his hands. Suddenly, the baby, who was previously pale and blue, turns green and starts crying. Gul'dan presents the baby as a new orc warrior. Then we see the portal closing again. The scene shifts to the Iron Forge, the central weapons supply of the kingdom of Azeroth, inhabited by workers. We see Lothar, a commander from Azeroth, looking at weapons made by the dwarf race. He is shown a new gun-shaped weapon they call the boomstick. While Lothar is looking at the boomstick, another dwarf arrives with news of an attack on one of their war battalions. Lothar rushes back to the capital of Azeroth, Stormwing. Upon arriving in Stormwing, Lothar inspects his many dead soldiers. One of his men says that there is someone else examining the bodies. Lothar gets curious and goes to find that person. When he finds them, Lothar immediately arrests them. We see that this person is a wizard, reciting a spell, but then Lothar immediately silences their mouth. The young person is named Khadgar, a former student of the Kirin Tor, a kind of school for wizards. The young person asks Lothar for permission to examine the bodies of his soldiers, and Lothar allows it. When examining one of the bodies and opening its mouth, green smoke comes out from inside. Lothar gets curious. The young wizard says that only the Guardian can explain this. So Lothar takes the wizard to meet the king, as only the king can summon the Guardian. The king, curious about what happened to Lothar's troops, becomes concerned when the young wizard says they were attacked with dark magic. Everyone seems anxious. The king asks the young wizard's name, who identifies as Khadgar. They are a candidate for Guardian, but they fled from the Kirin Tor and didn't complete their studies. Khadgar says they felt the presence of dark magic threatening Azeroth. They ask the king to quickly call the Guardian. Meanwhile, we see a fire in one part of the kingdom. The king, worried, allows Khadgar and Lothar to call the Guardian. Lothar takes Khadgar on a creature resembling a griffin, as in the Harry Potter movie, and they fly to find the Guardian. Elsewhere, we see the orc race attacking a village and capturing the people there. We see Durotan and his clan not participating in the attack because, according to Durotan, they would only fight against other warriors, not women and children. Back to Lothar and Khadgar, they arrive at the residence of the Guardian, a place called Karazhan. They are welcomed by the Guardian's assistant, Moros. Moros takes Lothar to meet the Guardian, passing through a long spiral staircase. Meanwhile, Khadgar stays at the base, drawn to the books in the library. Finally, Lothar, tired, reaches the top and finds the Guardian, Medivh, who is busy sculpting a clay golem statue. Lothar explains the reason for the visit: something has happened, and the king needs Medivh. Meanwhile, Khadgar, engrossed in reading, is distracted by a distant dark shadow. He approaches it, and the shadow disappears. A tattoo on his arm suddenly glows and points to a book, which he then picks up. Medivh descends and finds Khadgar. Medivh appears angry and casts a spell on Khadgar for breaking the potential Guardian oath and leaving the Kirin Tor. When Khadgar explains that he was sent by the king because dark magic entered Azeroth, Medivh removes his spell. Medivh explains that dark magic is the most terrible and incomparable, using lives as fuel, infecting its user, destroying what it touches, promising great power but with terrible consequences. Medivh says that dark magic should not exist in Azeroth. Medivh then teleports Khadgar and Lothar back to Stormwind. Arriving there, the king is anxious. According to reports, his troops were attacked by armed monsters riding wolves, but they can't be sure what creatures they are. Lothar has the idea to capture one of them. The king agrees and sends a troop led by Lothar to Hellwind Forest. When they arrive there, Medivh examines the area and sees pieces of tree trunks glowing green, traces of dark magic. Then a surprise attack occurs on Lothar's troops. Khan and Durotan, along with their warriors, emerge from the bushes and attack Lothar. Lothar's son is attacked, but his father quickly saves him. Blackhand loses his left hand hit by Lothar's boomstick. Following this, with the help of Medivh's magic, the green orcs melt due to the spell within their bodies, while the non-green orcs are not affected. With fewer and fewer orcs, Blackhand and his warriors retreat. Durotan also retreats after repelling the orcs. Lothar, frustrated for not capturing any orcs, pursues them. They manage to capture a large orc and a female orc who was with him on the journey. It turns out the female orc prisoner can speak the language of humans, and the large orc doesn't like her talking to Lothar. When the large orc tries to attack the female orc, Lothar quickly unsheathes his sword, and the large orc falls. Lothar takes the female orc before the king. The female orc identifies herself as Garona, a half-breed between orc and human. The king asks Garona where she's from, as she says she's not from the earth. The orcs' home planet was already ruined and dead, and now the orc race is trying to take over Earth. The king asks how the orcs came to Earth, and Garona explains that it was through a portal. She learned the human language from prisoners who would eventually be sacrificed to open the portal and bring all the orcs to conquer Earth. Lothar demands that Garona show the location of the portal. Initially, she refuses, but the king explains that he will set her free if she helps humanity. Meanwhile, in their hideout, Gul'dan punishes Blackhand for failing to lead the troops against the humans and for fleeing. Blackhand inserts his hand into a green flame, and slowly, the magic begins to corrode his body. Durotan cuts off Blackhand's hand to save his life. Gul'dan questions Durotan's loyalty, who has always opposed the dark magic used by Gul'dan. In the kingdom, Medivh meets Garona and asks who guided Gul'dan to the portal and to Azeroth. Garona replies that it was the demon, but she never saw the figure, only heard its voice. Lady Taria visits Garona, and Medivh leaves. Garona says that killing her would bring honor to the orcs, but instead, the woman brings her a hot drink and a blanket. She is also curious about the scars on Garona's body and the chain around her neck, indicating that she was a prisoner of the orcs. She adds that if Garona helps them, the king will grant her freedom. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Khadgar studies a book he took from Medivh's place. In the book, he sees the mentioned portal and a name, Aladi. Khadgar begins to copy the contents of the book. Elsewhere, Durotan tells a friend that since Gul'dan took power, their world has been destroyed. Wherever Gul'dan uses his magic, the land and trees die. Durotan wants to defeat Gul'dan but knows he can't do it alone. So, he thinks he can defeat Gul'dan with the help of humans. Back in Stormwind, Garona agrees to help the humans and prepares to show the portal's location to Lothar and his companions. They depart on horseback, passing through forests and rocky mountains. During the journey, Garona explains that her name means curse in the orc language and that she has always been a prisoner of Gul'dan since she was a child. Finally, they arrive at the portal's location. Garona explains that the prisoners will be used as magical fuel to open the portal. When they are about to leave, Durotan appears, expressing his desire to meet with the king at a specific location. Garona mentions wanting to join Durotan's clan, but he says she will be safer with the humans. Meanwhile, more orcs attack villages and capture prisoners. In the kingdom, elves, dwarves, and humans are growing increasingly concerned about the orc attacks. Lothar is informed that his son is injured, and his entire squad has been captured by orcs. At night, Garona reveals Durotan's plan to meet the king. The king seems interested, but Lothar suspects it might be a trap. However, the king agrees to meet with the orc. On the other hand, Lady Taria gives Garona a dagger for her protection. Elsewhere, Khadgar finds Medivh in his house and is surprised by the Guardian's presence. Medivh appears annoyed to see Khadgar investigating dark magic. He burns all the notes and orders Khadgar to stop meddling in his affairs and focus only on protecting the king. Medivh takes the book Khadgar had taken earlier. Khadgar then shows Lothar the remaining notes about dark magic, revealing that the orcs were called to Earth by someone. The next day, at the agreed-upon location, the king, accompanied by Lothar and Garona, meets Durotan. Durotan explains that in 2 days, the prisoners will be sacrificed, and the portal will be reopened to bring the rest of the orcs from the orc planet. While negotiating to defeat Gul'dan, green orcs emerge from the ground and attack Durotan's clan and the king's group. The Guardian, watching from a hill, casts a spell that creates a magical barrier, saving the king's group. However, while Lothar kills the remaining orcs, he sees his son trapped behind the magical barrier, and unfortunately, he is killed by Black Hand. At the top of the hill, Garona and Khadgar encounter Medivh, exhausted and unconscious. They take Medivh back to his home in Karazhan and place him in a lake to recover. When Medivh is placed in the lake, Khadgar sees Medivh's eyes glowing green. He is shocked and asks for permission to go to the Kirin Tor. Meanwhile, Gul'dan's portal construction is underway. At the site, we meet the traitor, Durotan's friend, who talks to the evil leader while the latter sucks the soul out of a man. When he returns to his clan's tribe, he finds out that Gul'dan has sent his orcs to kill everyone. Not believing it, he confronts his enemies and kills them. He goes to Draka, who is frightened, but he grants her time to escape with her son, not letting the orcs take her. At the Guardians' training grounds, the Kirin Tor, Khadgar finally arrives at the floating city. There, he reveals that he saw Medivh being influenced by dark magic. The elders of the Kirin Tor are angered, but when Khadgar mentions the name Aladi, they take him to a place with a black box. Aladi is an ancient entity, predating the era of the Guardians. Suddenly, one side of the box opens, forming a doorway, and Khadgar enters. Inside the box, she finds Aladi, the same figure she saw in the library at Karazhan. Aladi uses his last strength to warn Khadgar that Medivh has been overtaken by dark magic and instructs Khadgar to stop him to save the world. Meanwhile, in Stormwind, Medivh, exhausted and powerless, is placed in a magical lake by his assistant. Soon, something strange begins to happen, where we see the blue water turning green. Medivh confesses that he allowed the orcs to enter Earth because dark magic dominated him, and he couldn't resist. Medivh rises and absorbs his assistant's life. The king is planning an attack on the orc portal when Medivh arrives. He suggests taking only 3 legions for the attack, but Lothar wants all troops to participate. This creates tension between Medivh and Lothar ends up being arrested to calm down. In prison, Garona meets Lothar, who warns her not to trust Medivh and not to participate in the battle at the orc portal. Garona insists, then leaves her necklace with him, promising to return. The king and his troops set off for the portal. Meanwhile, Khadgar frees Lothar from prison, saying they need to save the king and stop Medivh first. They go to Karazhan to find Medivh. Elsewhere, Draka, fleeing from Gul'dan's troops and carrying her baby, reaches a river and places the baby in the current. She is attacked by an orc, and in the fight, she kills him but is gravely wounded and dies. At the orc portal, Durotan challenges Gul'dan to a sacred duel, and Gul'dan accepts. The leader removes his cloak and shows that even in old age, he has the power of a young orc, and the fight begins. In Karazhan, Khadgar and Lothar arrive using teleportation and find Medivh. They confront Medivh, now dominated by dark magic. Meanwhile, Medivh begins reciting a spell to open portals. During the duel between Durotan and Gul'dan, the portal starts reacting. Gul'dan becomes infuriated with the time wasted and proceeds to use dark magic to drain Durotan's life, unfortunately killing him. Many orcs, witnessing Gul'dan's treachery, refuse to follow him, desiring to be led by a true orc, not a demon. Enraged, Gul'dan absorbs the life force of several orcs and transfers his dark magic to Blackhand, making him more powerful. The king and his troops arrive at the portal and see Durotan's clan massacred. A battle between the orcs and Azeroth's troops ensues. In Karazhan, Lothar and Khadgar struggle to stop Medivh, who even summons a golem to fight Lothar. On the battlefield, Gul'dan initiates the ritual to open the portal, using the lives of the prisoners as energy. In Karazhan, Lothar and Khadgar manage to defeat Medivh, causing the golem to fall upon him. With Medivh incapacitated, the portal begins to close. Lothar rushes to the battlefield, where Medivh, freed from the influence of dark magic, regains consciousness and recites a spell that reopens the portal. The king orders the prisoners to be freed and to pass through the portal to Stormwind. The king invites Garona to ride with him to Stormwind. Before everyone can pass through the portal, Medivh dies, and the portal closes, leaving the king and some of his men behind. Black Hand approaches the king, seeking the honor of killing him. The king, realizing this, takes Garona's dagger and orders her to kill him. Garona hesitates, but upon seeing Black Hand approaching, she carries out the order, killing the king with the dagger. With this act, Garona gains honor among the orcs and hopes to bring peace between orcs and humans. Shortly after, Lothar arrives with a creature, but it is too late, the king is dead. While trying to carry the king's body, Lothar is attacked by Black Hand and loses consciousness. When he regains consciousness, he is in an arena, challenged by Black Hand to a sacred duel. Lothar then takes the king's sword and confronts his enemy, mercilessly defeating Black Hand and avenging his son's death. After the victory, Lothar realizes that Garona killed the king but decides to leave, with none of the orcs attacking him, as they have earned their respect. Meanwhile, Garona becomes a kind of supreme leader of the orcs, as she does not allow Gul'dan to attack again. Upon arriving in Azeroth, she tells Khadgar what Garona did, not knowing the real reasons, as the king, knowing her, asked her to make that choice, and her sacrifice finally brought peace between the two peoples. Moments later, there is a grand funeral ceremony and the coronation of the new king of Azeroth, the warrior Lothar. Finally, Durotan's baby, carried by the river's current, is saved by someone on the riverbank, concluding the story of the Warcraft movie.